All right, so Elon and everybody in the automated driving sphere, let's start thinking about the way that you could be canvassing for talent if you lived in the strategic pivot reality. Because I will tell you right now, I think having a drive-by visual system, yeah, that's certainly the most important system and the most difficult to build. Certainly is true. In some ways. So I think you're going to have this drive-by visual, you're going to have a grid feedback layer, and you're also going to have a telemetry system. That's what I personally believe. But in every one of these cases, just by the drive-by visual you're already doing, you could be talking with people about how you're building some of these approximations of trajectory from, and I know that maybe you're worried about that because you're worried about the way other AI systems could be built. Again, I try to talk about why it's important that we work together on a global culture and a global appreciation of culture, so that we don't have to worry about AI warfare, okay? People experimenting with drones, I've talked about that already. We could have people experimenting with drones safely and associate threat levels depending on the types of things they're doing with their code. And again, if you have an interconnected hybrid library system, you can analyze that all very, very quickly. You want to empower a cyber force to have that capability so that they can screen code that's being released to our overall societal grid in a very serious way, okay? And that's going to be even more important in the AI assistant and security grid, but AI driving, it's also very important. It's important in every one of these industries that we have security figured out. But let's talk about the way that you could be scouting for talent, because we're going to have to build this black box system. And there are going to be ways insurance has an opinion on how payouts should work. That's all a part of an automated driving solution. All of those things are related there. So I talk about that being all relevant in how you define this major market vertical. The insurance companies will be relevant certainly through a black box system. Just like we have black box systems when airplanes crash, we're going to have we might not call it the black box system, maybe we will, whatever we call it, there's going to be a crash analysis engine for airplanes, just like we have for airplanes, we're going to have it for vehicles as well. Only it's going to be looking at the complex relationships between these telemetry systems, your crash software black box system for vehicles is going to be more complex than it is currently for airplanes. If we ever get to a Jetsons level stage of society, then yes, then you're Jetsons level, but it'll be very similar to will be more important, but it'll be very similar to the terrestrial based drive-by driving systems that were automated. But yes, right now, the black box system on an airplane, its system isn't thinking about the interplay between other systems that aren't that airplane really. Whereas in driving calculations on the road, you're going to be making all these different calculations and you're going to be looking at when one system corrects. Maybe you're going to tell one system to make the decision to make a correction maneuver, but this one is not going to. And you want to design your algorithms together such that, I mean, I don't think there's any way of doing this other than designing your algorithms together between industries and thinking about a core layer that I'm talking about, having a major market vertical approach and industries coming together to make these systems possible. And I think that we need this democratic layer. Otherwise, we will always argue it's just going to be like Tesla or any company trying to say that they're the whole entirety of the solution, rather than being this market that can evolve and actually drive talent development, maybe even re-simulate certain challenges so that you can find the people with the skills to resolve those problems again. And then people believe in the way things are being handed off. There are so many reasons to have this strategy overall in society. And so AI driving grids, finally, I want to say, Elon, if you go for this strategic pivot plan, it is true, it won't help you with the drive-by visual systems can be retrofitted on older vehicles as well, but this telemetry system, I believe, with the drive-by, with the grid feedback and the telemetry system, I think those two systems can be made so sophisticated that the drive-by visual system becomes less important. You don't have to put as much work in the drive-by visual system, but you do still have to worry about the drive-by visual for animals that can cross the road and all of these different things. But also, I will say our telemetry system and our drive-by visual system should be looking at, we should be printing, we should be laying down paint on the roads with, I personally believe, some sort of metal stripping in the paint. And so I almost believe in laying down like stickers on the road, but I think that you can do this with a paint product. And by having, basically you can have metal filaments in your paint, and you can paint patterns in the paint that you wouldn't, it would just look like a white line, but in that paint you will see like a barcode like design. And so your vehicle is driving on the road, even though it just looks like a white paint by, visually, white line on the road visually, it's going to know that line, it divides the first and the second lanes in a highway. This line divides the second and the third lanes in the highway. So when it's driving down the highway, it's going to know I am in the second lane, I am in the third lane, and it's not using GPS coordinates for that. It knows I can see the lines on the road, and I know this line is for between the first and the second lane, this line is between the second and the third lane, and you can build very complex systems that then will be able to do passing and all of these things. And I honestly think it's fewer calculations than if it was the drive-by-visual system alone. Your drive-by-visual system alone would have to be worried about all these different cars and the way that they're moving around it every time. Whereas a telemetry system is going to be able to say, here are these expected trajectories, and I'm not detecting anything out of the ordinary, so we're all good. And it's going to be basically confirming data that the drive-by-visual system is going to be saying, like, do I see anything that's not already in my system? And it's going to be approximating and saying, okay, I'm driving over here, I'm driving over here, all these things. But most trustworthy, that telemetry system should be able to be what we have override things. So you think about the amount of calculation time that can happen in a drive-by-visual system versus the amount of calculation time that can happen in this telemetry system, and you're going to be able to make override priorities to avoid crashes more easily with this telemetry system. You're optimizing the amount of calculations per minute. Okay? You have to combine these systems, though, and we have to be talking about it in those ways. And so there are all of these things that we can be doing. Shortwave telemetry, they can, again, you can have Forza-like algorithms and these ebbs and flows, but these Forza algorithms are going to need the telemetry system to detect these ebbs and flows. If you just have the drive-by-visual, you're not going to be able to see that there's a pulsating effect in the highway a mile ahead of you that's about to, that we could correct if we had a telemetry system that could see a mile or two in each direction, so we could actually make these corrections more easily, and then you avoid more accidents. But if you don't do that, your drive-by-visual system is going to have to wait, and it's not going to be able to see in front of it like that. It's going to have to only be able to, there are going to be barriers, there's going to be this car, and it's not going to be able to see what's on the other side of this car, and all of that stuff. Your telemetry system will not have that problem. Your telemetry system will be able to go around that. It'll be stronger than that. And so, again, you want to have these more advanced systems. And Elon, you get everybody, if you do this strategic pivot plan, I started saying this earlier, you do the strategic pivot plan and you approach the national debt as part of this combined solution, and then every single company making these systems for automated driving, there's money in the economy to transition these cars, these older cars, to implement the telemetry, grid, and drive-by-visual system on these older models of vehicles. Now they can get a simpler, you can build a simpler drive-by-visual system if you have the telemetry and all these other things. And you have like the lanes on the road, you build them like I'm talking about, where you have different types of paint such that you can actually have like metal alloys and paint that will show like a barcode when you're painting these lines on the road. Then you don't have to actually place down a sticker. You're still spraying the paint, and you can have just different paint reservoirs and different tubes routed different ways, so that when you're spraying these lines, you're spraying this line with this nozzle head, and then when you go to spray the next line on the road, you're using this line, and maybe you do this with like 2 lanes at a time, so it's doing this lane and this lane, and then you just have to have these different spray heads for up to 8-lane highways. You know what I mean? And so that you can always configure those vehicles for that, and then every vehicle driving down the road will know what lane it's in for sure, with the most reliable system. And we can be talking about these combinations between how computers work and what they can see, and everybody in the workforce becomes more talented at building other related solutions using similar technological approaches, which means we're a more competitive, capable workforce overall. We're a stronger society. And that's, Elon, the ultimate, beyond valuable thing. That is the reality of if you choose to operate Tesla and your AI driving, all of your initiatives, in ways that you can. Tesla and AI driving, that's a key layer that definitely applies here. Twitter and X, and what you want to do with evolving social media, there are relevant things here for psychology and the strategic pivot approach. You want to include both of those things in a social media, absolutely. And so I'm just trying to get you to see that there's a way that you can recruit more talent. And my options are to apply and build a polished resume, or if we have this set of things, you can see who has great pitches and wants to build different things. And that can be part of how you scout for talent.